All right, so get ready because today we are going deep, deep into the world of Expleo Solutions Ltd.
Expleo Solutions Ltd.
Yeah, so, they're a global tech consulting and engineering firm, and you've given us a whole bunch of their recent financial reports, plus some interesting leadership announcements, and we're going to break down what's really interesting here, especially for you. We know you're interested in this kind of like global business adapting in this tech landscape that just seems to be changing all the time.
Yeah, what's really caught my eye, I have to say, is just that we're looking at a company that's really on the upswing, and it seems like they're making some pretty savvy moves to keep that going.
Yeah, let's just jump right into those financials then, huh?
Yeah,
Because those numbers, I gotta say, they're pretty eye-popping.
they are. Yeah, their revenue's up like a solid 10.7% compared to this time last year. And
Wow.
even quarter over quarter, they're still seeing, growth, like 2.8%.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But okay, it's the profit side of things that I'm really interested in. Because they're not just growing, they're practically soaring.
Yeah.
Like their adjusted EBITDA, which is essentially like a measure of their operating profitability, is up 19.3% year over year.
Wow.
And get this, their profit after all the expenses are paid is up like a whopping 78.1% compared to the same quarter last year.
Yeah, that kind of surge in profit is a pretty clear signal that they're running a really like tight ship, operationally speaking.
Yeah.
They're not just bringing in more business, but they're doing it in a way that's incredibly efficient,
Yeah.
which is, something any investor would be like happy to see.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so let's dig in a little bit more, see
Yeah.
what's driving those impressive numbers.
Yeah.
And what really kind of jumps out at me is their digital revenue, which basically represents their work in all those like cutting edge tech areas, right? So like AI, cloud computing, all that digital transformation stuff. And this digital revenue makes up almost half of their total revenue.
Yeah.
It's at 48%.
And that's, puts them ahead of the curve, especially if you compare them to some of the more traditional consulting firms.
Totally, totally.
Really highlights their successful shift towards those digital services that everyone is looking for now.
It's like they have their finger on the pulse
Yeah.
of where everything's going.
Absolutely.
So now if we look at like where this revenue is flowing from,
Yeah.
it's interesting that the BFSI sector, banking, financial services, and insurance,
Yeah.
that's like their stronghold.
Right. It contributes a huge amount of their total revenue, like 76.8%.
Wow, that's a lot.
But I think what's really interesting is the growth they're experiencing in the aero and auto sectors,
Oh,
which traditionally haven't been as like tech focused.
so they're not just like sticking to what they know,
Well,
they're branching out.
Exactly. Yeah. Venturing into industries that are, I think, ripe for disruption.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And then geographically speaking, Europe is still their main revenue generator.
Yeah. Bringing in 51.6% of the total. But
North America is showing faster growth, which suggests to me that they're not just content with dominating one region.
yeah, they're setting their sights on being a global player.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and speaking of building, let's talk about the people who are like at the top.
Yeah.
Expleo has made a couple of key leadership appointments, and I think the backgrounds of these people are really interesting.
Yeah. They've brought in Mr. Unikrishnan Anil Kumar as head of capabilities delivery. And, that's more than just a fancy title.
I love those titles.
I know. I know.
So impressive.
But what's impressive is, he's got all this experience in managing large-scale projects, international teams. He's even got a proven track record of like successfully navigating joint ventures,
That's huge.
which suggests to me that Expleos is like gearing up for some major collaborative growth.
I love it.
Yeah.
And then there's Mr. Manjunathan Chananagounder,
Yeah.
stepping into the Director of Human Resources role. And, at first glance, you might be like, okay, another HR appointment.
Right.
But hold on. Manjunathan's expertise is in building leadership,
Yeah.
driving cultural transformations,
Yeah.
and implementing like those global HR processes that are so crucial for a company with global ambitions.
And it's like they're recognizing that to achieve those ambitions, they need to have the right people and the right culture.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
It was like they're laying the groundwork for a future where they're not just a player, but they're a leader.
Yeah.
And speaking of taking the lead, they're not just building their internal team, they're expanding their global presence in some really interesting ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. They've announced they're establishing a wholly owned subsidiary in Saudi Arabia, which I think is a really interesting move.
Oh, yeah, that's where it gets like super interesting to me because Saudi Arabia isn't just any market.
Right.
It's a country with, like, huge ambitions to diversify its economy,
Yeah.
and they're putting tons of resources into tech.
You've hit the nail on the head. Their expansion into Saudi Arabia is such a smart, strategic play.
Yeah.
It positions them as a key player in this, like, rapidly growing market that's hungry for tech expertise.
It's a perfect match.
Yeah.
So this move, coupled with those leadership appointments, it really makes you wonder what's next.
What are they going to do next? Yeah.
What other regions or industries might they target? And how will these strategic moves shape their future?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We're seeing a company performing well financially, making calculated moves, investing in strong leadership, all very positive signs.
Mm-hmm.
But can they keep it up and really deliver on these, like, ambitious goals?
Well, that's a story that's still unfolding.
It is.
But let's bring it back to you, our listener, for a sec.
Yeah.
And, what does all this mean for someone who's interested in the tech industry and global business trends?
Well, I think what we're looking at here is a company that is firing on all cylinders. They're financially strong, they're strategically expanding, and they're investing in strong leadership.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a company to keep an eye on, whether you're interested in tech investments, international business, or just understanding how global companies are, adapting to this, like, rapidly changing world.
And as for that million-dollar question about their future,
Yeah.
well, I guess only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
But we'll be here to break it all down as the story unfolds.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
There's more to come.
More to come. Well, before we get too, like, carried away with all this positive news about Expleo's growth, I think it's important to, step back a bit and think about the potential risks and challenges they might face.
That's a really good point, actually. It's easy to focus on the good stuff, but for a real deep dive, we got to look at both sides of the coin, right?
Exactly. And one thing that comes to mind straight away is, just how competitive the tech consulting and engineering industry is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a tough field out there.
For sure.
You've got established giants and all these, like, nimble startups all competing for the same piece of the pie.
Expleo is definitely not playing around.
No.
So how do they, like, stand out? What makes them different? What's their, secret sauce, so to speak?
That's the question they're going to have to answer, especially as they move into new markets like Saudi Arabia, where they might not be as well known.
Right. They need to, like, make their value propositions super clear,
Yeah.
not just to potential clients, but to employees, investors, everyone.
Exactly. They need to say, this is what makes us different. This is what makes us the better choice. And that might mean, showcasing their expertise in certain industries, highlighting their commitment to innovation, or maybe emphasizing their, global reach and their ability to work across different cultures.
It's like they need to tell a good story.
Yeah, a story that goes beyond just listing their skills and capabilities.
It's about connecting with people on a deeper level, right?
Yeah, building trust and confidence.
Which brings us back to culture, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, because it's the people who bring that culture to life. It's their passion, their skill, their dedication that's going to determine whether Expleo succeeds or not.
And those leadership appointments, they're so key.
They are.
Krishnan and Manjunathan, they're not just filling roles, they're shaping the whole culture of the company.
Yeah, they're setting the tone for how Expleo operates on a global scale.
It's like they're building the foundation for the future.
And speaking of their future, one thing that struck me as we were going through all this material is how much emphasis they put on engaging with their stakeholders.
Oh, absolutely. They're all about transparency and open communication.
Yeah, it's not just about reporting to investors. They're actively engaging with their employees, clients, even the communities they work in.
You can see that in their financial reports. They're not just talking about profit, but also things like employee satisfaction, client relationships, and how they contribute to the local economy.
It's like they're trying to show the whole picture, not just the financial side of things.
Which is so important these days.
Yeah, people want to see companies that are responsible, ethical, companies that care about more than just making money.
And it's funny, one of the slides in their investor presentation actually talks about their core values.
Oh, yeah. What are they?
I'm always curious about that stuff. It tells you a lot about a company.
Yeah.
Well, they list courage, excellence, collaboration, respect, and accountability.
Those are some solid values.
And they seem to align with everything we've been talking about. Their strategic moves, those leadership appointments, it all fits together.
Right. Like courage, for example. Expanding into a new market like Saudi Arabia takes guts.
Mm.
And then there's excellence. which you can see in their focus on efficiency and their profit growth.
And collaboration is huge, especially with their new head of capabilities delivery, who's got all that experience with joint ventures.
And their expansion into Saudi Arabia, that's going to involve working with local businesses, so collaboration is going to be essential.
For sure. And respect and accountability, those are crucial for building a strong culture and being ethical, especially as they go global.
It's good to see those values reflected in what they're actually doing.
Definitely. So it makes you wonder, how are those values going to play out in Saudi Arabia where the culture is so different?
That's a great question. It'll be interesting to see how they adapt their approach while staying true to who they are.
It's like they need to be chameleons in a way.
Yeah, but without losing their own identity.
Totally. And that brings us back to that idea of cultural agility.
Yeah, being able to operate effectively in different cultures is so important for any global company.
Okay, so switching gears a bit, I know you were really interested in digging into their profit growth.
I am, yeah.
And I am too. Like that 78.1% jump in profit after taxes, it's crazy.
It is impressive.
What's driving that? Is it mostly revenue growth or are they just managing their costs better? Are there specific projects or business units that are like killing it?
Let's see if we can figure that out together.
Uh,
Okay, so looking at their financials, one thing that pops out is that their employee costs, which are usually a big expense for companies like this, have increased, but not as fast as their revenue.
so they're getting more bang for their buck, so to speak.
Exactly. And then when you look at their other expenses, like travel, marketing, admin stuff, those have been pretty stable.
So they're not just cutting costs everywhere, they're being smart about it.
They're finding that balance between investing in growth and keeping things lean.
But I still want to know about those specific projects or business units that might be driving those amazing results.
I know, right? It would be great to have that level of detail, but unfortunately, these reports don't break things down that much.
Bummer. I guess we'll have to keep guessing for now. But hey, maybe some of our listeners out there have some insights.
Yeah, if you know someone we don't, let us know.
We'd love to hear from you.
But even without all the nitty-gritty details, we can still learn a lot from what they do tell us. Remember, they talked about the growth in their digital revenue and the contributions from BFSI, Aero, and Auto.
Right, like those are the engines driving their success.
Exactly. And then there's that new subsidiary in Saudi Arabia. That's a big question mark that could change everything.
So much potential there.
The more we dig into Expleo, the more questions come up.
I love it. It's like a detective story.
It is, and it reminds us that even with all the data and analysis, there's always an element of mystery.
That's what makes it so exciting.
Exactly. Business is always changing. There's always something new to learn.
And that's why we love doing these deep dives.
Yeah, it's not just about finding the answers. It's about asking the right questions.
So as we continue exploring Expleo, let's keep in mind that their story is still being written.
We're just getting a sneak peek.
And there's so much more to come.
Now, we've talked a lot about their strengths and all the good stuff, but to really understand Expleo, we need to think about the potential risks and challenges they might face too.
For sure. What are some of the headwinds they might encounter?
Well, as we've been going through all this stuff about Expleo, one thing that keeps coming back to me is the whole culture thing.
Oh, yeah.
We've touched on it here and there, but I think it's worth really digging into, especially with their global ambitions.
Yeah, culture can be a make or break factor for a company, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And for a company like Expleo that wants to expand globally, navigating all those different cultures is going to be so important.
It's a huge challenge, especially when you think about their move into Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
They'll be working with people who have totally different expectations, communication styles, you name it.
It's like they need to find a way to be themselves, but also respect those differences.
Exactly. That balance is so tricky. And remember, their core values, courage, excellence, collaboration, all that, how they live those values in Saudi Arabia is going to be key.
It's like they need to translate those values into a new language, a cultural language.
Yeah, it's a fascinating challenge. And it's not just about what happens outside the company. Their internal culture matters too.
Right. You don't want different parts of the company feeling like they're on different planets.
Exactly. They need to create a shared sense of identity even as they adapt to different places.
And those leadership appointments, it seems like they picked the right people for the job.
Yeah, both Krishnan and Man Jonathan have a ton of experience working across cultures.
And their new HR director, he's all about cultural transformation, so it's clearly a priority for them.
Yeah, they're putting their money where their mouth is.
I really think their ability to build a strong culture, one that can adapt and be inclusive, that's going to make all the difference.
Totally. Sometimes it's those things you can't measure on a spreadsheet that matter most.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today.
We have.
We've talked about their financials, their expansion plans, their new leaders, and of course, the whole culture piece.
Yeah, it's been a great deep dive.
Hopefully, you, our listener, have a better sense of what Expleo is all about.
And what the future might hold for them.
But remember, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, their story's still being written.
There's so much more to come.
So keep an eye on Expleo, folks.
You never know. Maybe we'll have to do another deep dive down the road.
That'd be fun.
All right, until then, happy exploring.
Happy exploring.